I'd like to welcome everyone. I'm particularly happy to see you on Saturday afternoon. I'm very pleased that you're coming to help celebrate this exhibition that we've put up for Hassan Musa's work here at SOAS. Most of you know that the impetus for the exhibition, the reason that it's in this blue room, is that Hassan and I have donated his decorated envelopes to me. That's a kind of relational art that was going on since the early 90s. Relational meaning that there was an interaction, an artistic dialogue going on through the post and the postman and everybody else in Hassan's efforts to communicate about art and also to do something which was outside the gallery space or below the market. Below the market, I mean, if I was to sell them, they would be worth quite a bit of money, so it's not quite below the market in the end. But very much the history of, or at least an evidence of the history of Hassan's interaction with us here at SOAS and in developing the story of contemporary art, and also by art by Africans that has been going on in a big way since the mid-90s. So today, it's the opportunity for different artists from the Sudan or people other than myself to actually respond to the work as you see it. Just one more thing about what we've actually displayed. The donation are the envelopes. The books I would call part of Hassan's outreach project, but many of them are also reflected in the envelopes. And then we thought it just wouldn't be quite right unless, at least give a full view of Hassan's career, unless we had some of his textile works. So the textile works are on loan from Patricia and Hassan and selected by them to complement what you see, and that's basically this interactions between his different kinds of work. Also the slide projector at the far side, which shows some of his most recent work. And next week we'll have more of his outreach activities, because Sigrun, who's in the doorway, will be talking about Hassan's art activities outside the studio or outside the gallery. And then over here, if you haven't seen how Hassan makes his works, there are 3 videos, again, loaned by him. So I think it's Hassan's generosity that I'm celebrating with you today, and I'm very happy to do that.
Anyway, thank you very much. I'm here to speak about Hassan Musa's work, but I'm not going to speak about everything. I'm just talking about his calligraphy, the way he uses the Arabic symbols and the Arabic letters to build a drawing or to make a comment in a visual way. Right.
Thank you.
My name is Ibrahim Hassan, otherwise known to a lot of friends Ibrahim Kojan. And I'm not an artist by trade, but I did a diploma in art and culture in Sudan in 1988. But I was graduated from medical school, and actually I'm a consultant surgeon. So please make a distinct line between the 2 professions. I'm going to talk about Hassan Musa's use of calligraphy and the Arabic symbols to build a painting or drawing or to make an image that is most likely very intriguing. But before we go into details, Hassan Musa is a Sudanese artist, as everybody knows, but he is also one of those people who is really has a very strong ideas about everything. He was brought up as a socialist in 1960s and 70s, so he he knows a lot about the movement of liberation in Africa, and hence the whole world. 99% of his work during the 1970s and 80s, although he uses pop art as a tool of expressing himself, but also he uses calligraphy to build up his images, as I say. And he used his work as a tool to communicate with people. However, he has a very distinct way of doing those things. For example, he's a socialist, and he is very strong in his ideas. And to a large extent, He can say whatever he wants to say through his images, and sometimes really, really shocking images. But maybe this is the way he used to portray himself. Maybe sometimes the shock itself can make people make notice and see what he can say visually. And because he was, during 1970s, I remember quite well, he writes articles in Sudanese culture magazines, and those articles are all about criticism of whatever kind of political dictatorships and everything in Africa. And he, in that sense, he is a very politicized man with a very vivid imagination. So the mixture of his self-education, his culture, and his artistic abilities came all through to show this, to tell us exactly what he wants in life. I remember quite well from his early works, when he started to use calligraphy, he tells people that his calligraphy, the Arabic symbols that used by conventional calligraphists, is actually some kind of just a technical work. This is not an artistic work, although there is a department of calligraphy in the School of Art. And he tells them, or he told me in one of those discussions, that is whatever they write and make paintings through calligraphy, they are technicians, they are not artists. But he uses the same Arabic symbols and Arabic letters to tell people, actually, there is more into these symbols than just to convey a message from Quran or from the poetry. And when you look at the small letters he uses and the dots and everything, they don't look like Arabic in terms of the build of the shape. They look like he made them himself. I don't know whether there is. So, actually, there's some examples there. You can have a look if you know exactly what I mean. So Hassan Musa, through the years from 1960s till now, he managed to change the whole image of the Arabic letter. He made it himself. He made the Arabic letters, that is, he uses a building block of his own paintings, and he uses them even in painting or designing images like figurative drawing or figurative painting. And you can see that, for example, in Arabic we say there is 12 ways of writing the Arabic letters. And he mixed all these 12 ways just to make one single painting. And that is by itself, it looks like, to me, it's full of energy and a very big imagination of how he uses the symbols and images. That is, he built up his things. There is some other things regarding his work. For example, this work, for example, behind you, is, I don't know, it's 1880s artist, I don't remember his name, but he used the image as a background, and then he built all the people look like footballers, and used the chicken and some other things to make some kind of contemporary image of what he thinks about today's football. For example, he likes football as an art, like dancing, like anything else. But he used the same image of an old artist to bring his own idea about the artistry of football. And he thinks that his football nowadays looks like a very plain and a very boring thing, unless it is really kind of art like Palais, for example. This is one thing. And Hassan Musa has a very distinct way of using the word calligraphy and abstract collage. Collage means, collection of multiple images and build them in one piece to give a hint or to give a certain dialogue or a certain image that has a meaning to him, at least. And in that sense, he doesn't just use the collage that like the way we use in the School of Art. He uses collage from old paintings like Van Gogh and old things like the American flag or anything, and then he built small images within those things. So he brings up a completely different idea, and sometimes even Van Gogh disappears completely from the image that is you see. And this is just one aspect of his things. And then the third aspect, the way he writes letters and the envelopes. There's painting in the envelopes, there's calligraphy in the envelopes, and there's also collage in the envelopes. The piece of the envelope itself, when you look at it, is a piece of art. You can put it actually and look at it for a few days or even months, despite the fact that he just write what he thinks to a friend or to a family member, but he uses these things as if he give you part of his thinking, part of his soul, putting that in the envelopes and send it to it. So it is, although it is not entirely Hassan Musa's way of doing things, but when you go back in the history, like the letters between Van Gogh and his brother, between Claude Monet and his peers during those days, so it is not new, but I think the way he does it, that is he collected a lot of things. So one of the envelopes I looked at, there is a piece of paper from a newspaper, there is his own writing, some splash colors here and there, and then he comes up with a very nice collage, Hassan Musa's letters. A third thing that is I want to mention regarding Hassan Musa's way of work, sometimes you think the way he performs his art like a performance art, like one-man show, or like an artist, a theater artist, like a stand-up artist. But he uses his skill in image making. He can sit here with all these walls are blank. He can sit down, and in about, say, a couple of hours, he can make 5 or 10 pieces and put them while you are watching. So in a way, as if he would tell you that there is no secret about art. It is just the way you express yourself, and he put them, and that is a show. And I guess this is unique to Hassan Musa. I didn't see any, or in the history of art at least, I didn't see anybody who does that, except the street artists who do portraits for people, or maybe stand-up comedians like my friend here. Digel is a stand-up comedian, by the way. He's also an artist from Sudan. And if you can just have a look at that now, he is using Arabic calligraphy, they call it raga, but the way he put the letters and the symbols, he's slowly building an image. At the end of it, and even the way, even the stroke that he uses is completely different from the ones that people use in Arabic calligraphy, but he managed to use that piece. Like when I asked him, he called it gargariba, I don't know. Gargariba means it's a small piece of wood that we use in Sudan to make kisra. So he uses those pieces of wood, wide them, and he used them to build up his image. And after a few minutes, you can see the image is coming up like a piece of abstract art. So he is doing this while he was in his own show. So this is the way he performed his art. So he talked to people, and he uses whatever in front of him with ink and pieces of stroke, and just end up with making a lot of images, and that will be his exhibition. Okay. One of my favorites, actually, this piece and this piece, he uses the, as I say, the Arabic calligraphy to build up an image. And then even the way he holds the pen, or the Arabic pen, he actually drew it up there. And he made as if this is the way I make things. It comes from me and my mind, my emotions about the whole thing, and it flows like that. If you come across similar work, and there is a classic Arabic calligraphist, he said, this is nonsense.
It doesn't look like the other ones I see on Google.
Yeah, completely nonsense, because the Arabic calligraphy, they use traditional Arabic symbols and traditional Arabic lettering, so to speak. While Hassan Musa, he squeezes them and he breaks them and he makes them smaller or bigger to his like and to come up with a distinct image. For example, the zebra here, although from a distance you can see Arabic letters, but when you come closer, you cannot use very small symbols and very big symbols and wide or fat or thin in one Arabic verse. But in this one, he used them to build up the image of the zebra. So this is the way he makes things. So if you took, if you took the word, the letter H, for example, from the middle of this image, it doesn't look like any H written in Arabic. But you can see this is H, but it doesn't look like the Arabic H, because he made it to look like that so he can build up the abdomen of the...
Is it like teasing you? I mean, do you feel like...
It is actually. Yeah, because you have to follow the lines to find the Arabic words within the painting or within the drawing. And that is not for me, but for the classic Arabic calligraphist, it's very teasing. And sometimes it is a bit intriguing and why he's doing this with our words.
He's transgressing.
So this is one of the things that is, for example, the building of this little sparrow. It's very, very beautiful, but the main building of the sparrow, or the main image, he used something called thuluth. It's a type of Arabic calligraphy. They call it thuluth.
It's a thin line.
No, the big ones.
Oh, the big one, okay.
And the thin lines are just like doodling using the same Arabic words, but he spread them in unidentified kind of images.
I was wondering about the white lady's picture on his drawings. The lady here, and I suggest maybe he did that because he suffered when he came to this country. Or there is another explanation.
Well, I'm not sure he suffered about, with his, when he moved to France, but because he's still, his strong art telling us that he's just, collaboration between his culture and a French culture, whatever. But Ibrahim, do you have anything about it?
Just one more thing, actually. Also, when he moved to France, he actually been portrayed to the French people as an African artist. But he doesn't like the idea of being an African artist. He likes the idea just to be an artist, because African artists during 1960s and 70s is actually associated with certain images and certain ideas that is, to his mind, is actually being, as he said, transcended from the European to the African people. And then when they become artists, they come and paint and do their art according to what they think, not to what the African artists think. That's why when he went to France initially, every African artist, he does the same thing, the African warrior, the animals and everything else that is related to Africa. But he wanted to come with a completely different idea that is an African art that is related to the intellectuality of the person, not related to who you are or you came from or whether you're black or white. That's why if you took Hassan Musa's name from this exhibition, it looks like any pop artist or any artist that is not identified. He just wanted those images to represent Hassan Musa, the very hardcore socialist during 1960s and 70s, and Hassan Musa's now. So in a way, as if he was telling people.
That's why I thought maybe he will be rich by putting these images.
Well, yeah, he had impact to improve, his work and make it as a worldwide, not just Hassan Musa as a Sudanese, artist.
Can the audience have a word?
Oh yes,
Well, I'll start with Ibrahim. He was too modest, but he did a very brave thing. Right in his medical education, he gave up and went to art school and got a diploma in art before going back to be a doctor. which is a great thing. The other thing is this exhibition. I must admit that I'm not a painter, and I only enjoy figurative, concrete painting. The abstract painting and all these things pass me by. I've noticed that our painters who left Sudan and came to live in diaspora in Europe and whatever, most of their paintings, to me, appear to be talking to the host people, not to us. I can barely see anything that reminds me of Sudan here, apart from one about a Sudanese family, where you find Sudanese faces, Sudanese hair doing, and faces of men. The rest is all, call it abstract, call it whatever. And then there is the other preoccupied with pop art or abstract painting or Arabic things. We are not Arabs, we are Africans. Where is the African in all this? To take the calligraphy, obviously, every painter likes to beat the people who went before him, because in our generation, the greatest calligrapher was Osman Abdullah Wagi Allah. Yes. And he wrote the whole Quran in his beautiful handwriting. Hassan Musa obviously tried to beat him, and the only way is to make images which I can't understand. Perhaps you and Ibrahim can understand, and thank you, both of you, for trying to tell us what it means. But for me, it makes it cold. It doesn't arouse any positive feeling about it. And I'm sorry to be so critical, but I wish our painters here, don't forget the people, don't forget us, don't forget the Sudanese, don't forget Sudan. Paint something that would remind them of the place we came from. Please, thank you.
Can I say something to you quickly? Just about Hassan Musa. You know, Hassan Musa, his pursuit for art started when he was a student at the College of Art in Sudan, even before that. And his pursuit on the thinking of the colonial at that time, before that, is framing the African artists as African artists. Hassan and Abdullah Bola were, if you went back to the literature in Al-Ayyam and other newspaper, you will find that there was a big argument between those two and Madrasa Khartoum, Khartoum School of Art, which was actually all their philosophy were based on the Africanistic thinking and culture. Yeah. And Hassan was pursuing that art is art. It shouldn't be framed by people or place or anything else. This is why in Hassan's art you will find the African stuff, you'll find the Arabic stuff or the calligraphy stuff, you'll find the European stuff, but it's a whole idea. And he took that idea to France and criticized the colonial thinking in France about framing African artists, that they have to be in that frame and not to get out of it. So if you saw European images in Hassan's art, that doesn't mean he mentally was changed because he lived in France. No, that was part of him trying to say that African is for everyone, art is for everyone. It's not just for art or for African, or it's not just for European. And part of that is that envelope there, where he put himself and Van Gogh and someone else in behind bars. Rembrandt. Yes, he put that. The three artists from different eras, from different places, behind bars, okay, and that his own way of standing against this whole way of thinking, because and that makes him.
I admitted that I don't have the wild imagination of the artist. I'm very concrete in my interpretation of things. So I like figurative art. And I like art that represents the Sudan. Whether he lives in France or the United States or whatever, he should produce at least one or two things that remind me of where he came from. That is what I'm just saying.
If you look at his books there, this is actually stories from our own...
And you see, his art has got to be interpreted by Mu'taz and Ibrahim. Otherwise, nobody here would have knew what he was doing by Arabic calligraphy.
There was a very funny story. Hassan was telling it all the time, that he had an exhibition and someone else in Sudan, someone came to him and said, "What does that painting means?" And Hassan said to him, "What do you see? What it means to you?" and what do you see in that painting? And the guy said, "Oh, I see a naked woman." And Hassan said to him, "Actually, that naked woman is just in your head." So that he likes art to be interpreted. He likes people to see it and enjoy it.
Right, Mu'taz wants to stick to me to speak.
School.
Yeah. From 1980s when I was in the art school with Mu'taz Badawi, all the time he tries to pass the stick to me to talk. And he said, "Yeah, I just want to paint really, and you do the talking." Anyway, Mu'taz mentioned the school, the Khartoum School of Art, and the long story between Hassan Musa and Bola in one side and the other painters from Sudan in one side. And basically, the Khartoum School of Painting, or of art, they just, people that came up with a name to what they're doing. It is a mixture of calligraphy and symbols from Sudan back.
At least the School of One,
Abdel Al is the School of One, the latest one. It's a mixture. The best person who can portray that school is actually Ibrahim Salahi. And because it's a mixture of images from Africa mixed with some calligraphy and the vivid colors of Sudan, different tribes, even you can see the symbols in the faces. And they call that...
even the color is very well warm.
Very warm, yes, exactly. And they call that the Khartoum School of Painting or Art. And basically, as if they wanted to say, we have a distinct way of making our art in the Nile area, actually in Sudan in particular. And that distinct way will label the Sudanese as just a small place in the whole art world. And that is what Hassan Musa stood against with the late Abdullah Bola. And they wanted art to be very universal, to be perceived by anybody as something to celebrate and something about beauty. This is all about Hassan Musa and Abdullah Bola. And there is a series of articles written in the papers during that day, fighting between the two groups. And actually, at that time, we were like teenagers, but we just enjoyed, seeing those big people writing about their ways of thinking and stuff. So that is the school.
in the mid-70s before they left for France?
Yes, yes. And I think the last article was written in Al-Ayyam, 1977. That time it's a newspaper, but they have a cultural part of it every Thursday. And it's all about what is art. And the collection of that series of articles, it actually can make a very fascinating book about the way the Sudanese art is thinking at that time. Anybody wants to have this stick? It's a very heavy one, I tell you.
If you had a chance to look at the exhibition, if you want to say anything, comment.
And you mentioned, this school, Madrasa Khartoum, Khartoum art. I think all the art school they're coming from the poet and the novelist, and not the artist only. And that's a problem with the Khartoum art school. It's only, painters, peoples. Like they cannot make, the whole school, the philosophy of the art. And
Yeah. Just an addition, also at that time there is madrasa at Abadamak. You know Abadamak?
Yeah.
People came from Sudan. Abadamak is, anybody knows Abadamak?
One of the gods wasn't here.
Yeah, one of the black pharaohs god, and there is it's the school of Abadamak. It's a group of poets in Sudan. They started to write poetry similar to the area, and they were anti-establishment as well. They are anti-influence of the Arab in the region, and I think they put their hands together with the Sudanese School of Art somehow.
Painting, and it says the total happiness, and I couldn't really understand. I couldn't see any happiness in that picture.
Oh, the irony of the word.
Oh yeah, I couldn't interpret it. Can you just tell me how you see it?
All right. Yes, it took us all a bit of time. Those of you who are French, maybe, or French, or have experience in France, Total represents the oil company.
Total, yeah.
Yeah, Total Oil Company. And they're the two quotes. I think we
Yeah, we could.
yeah. First, the whole picture is representing, or is responding to a painting by Francois Millet about the gleaners. And the gleaners are the people who come into the field and pick up what's left after the harvest. So it's like the dregs of what's ever there. And that, I think, is a reference to Hassan's sense of his empathy for poor people, and writ large. But also a little bit of what maybe some of his life has been like at times, where he's picking things up. So they're picking things up. Their hands are bandaged, because there's another painting where he uses the gleaners, and he calls it a déminage, which is decommissioning landmines. So these are ladies who are picking up or I think they're all ladies, picking up what's on the ground, and some of their fingers have been injured because they got messed up with a landmine. Anyhow, the work itself, this is another kind, to me, yeah, maybe pop art, but the shape of this is a bit either like a vestment if you're a Christian, or if you relate back to Mahdi mendicants' jackets, or pre-Mahdi actually, the patchwork, and also the shape. Usually there's another bit that goes out over here, so you see a space for the arms. So I think it's beyond the idea of pop art, but the Total Happiness title is an irony, because the second quote, there are two quotes in Gothic script written in French, which I can't read the Gothic, let alone the French, very well. Now the upper one is, I'll say second, but the lower one was from the CEO of Total, when the exhibition called Africa Remix, which was a very large show, which we had in London in 2005 at the Hayward Gallery, where Hassan, until today, I just saw an article last week where they were reminiscing about Africa Remix, and it was Hassan's image and one by Ellen Atsui, which were remembered. And that's when Hassan was doing these Osama bin Laden's, The American Dream, which a little bit of that is reflected in those cases. But it was really Hassan's what we call breakthrough show. He gained in international recognition at that time in 2005. When the show went around the world for 3 years, I think 2008 or something, Japan, South Africa, different places in Europe. But anyhow, when it was in Paris at the Pompidou Art Center in central Paris, it was the CEO of Total who wrote the introduction to the catalog, and they also sponsored the show. This is interesting because of what's going on next door today, actually. And it says, how much Total Oil has helped the development of African countries, which, if you're aware of extractive industries and the fact that these oil companies are taking and not giving back, they're not processing the oil necessarily, blah, 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 blah. So the second quote is from the CEO, and that's where the title Total Happiness actually comes. You may be aware that this afternoon there's a sit-in at the British Museum, which is against BP, British Petroleum, because BP are the main sponsors to their Assyria show, and given their role, various roles in that war, it's a little ironic or whatever. People are bringing that to the attention of the museum. So in a way, this is the same idea, except that Hassan's is not a demonstration. Hassan's is artwork. It has more different levels of interpretation. As I said, you can actually start off with the basic shape, with the fact that he's doing patchwork and that reminiscent, going back to a jibba, perhaps, or mendicant's jacket. There's another name which I can't recall. And then this is also interesting that how he builds up. One of the things I think we talked about last week when you were here, when he's working with calligraphy, it's on white paper for the most part. When he's doing European style painting, if we can call it that, it's on something that's already printed. So there already is a story. It's not a fresh start for him in European painting. He can do what he wants with calligraphy, and he obviously, as you said so very kindly, or clearly actually, he has been quite path-breaking or revolutionary in how he's used calligraphy on white paper. I mean, that case sort of stands out because of the white and black. But with these works, very colorful. I think that's quite deliberate. He will always say his work is this kind of work is colorful, and also referencing Sudan. So you don't have to make a direct reference, I am Sudanese. I mean, he would never say, I am African. Basically, he says, I'm a freeloader on this Africa business. It gets me attention, so fine. But frankly, I'm a bit embarrassed. I just want to be myself, what you have said so very clearly. But with art, it doesn't have to be direct. It's the nuance which is powerful. It's like what I think the teasing that comes from the calligraphy. I mean, surely this is teasing those of us who have studied Western art history, when we see this version of the Gleaners and how he's really reappropriated, reinterpreted, mixed it with Sudan, mixed it with landmines. His politics is there. And then the quote that's above it is the French anthropologist Michel Liras. I don't know if he's an anthropologist, but the one who took the trip from Dakar to Djibouti and is very famous in Parisian circles. And he's talking to other Europeans, I think in this case. We are too much inclined to see happiness in people who make us happy, where we look at them. So we are projecting ourselves onto other people. And of course, this has been going on a whole lot. So he's using those two quotes to, on top of his fabric, on top of the patchwork. And certainly, I mean, I don't know, as I said before, there's not a one-to-one with Sudan ever in his work, but it's always there. Any of us who know him, we know that he's got two brains in his head or two bits of his heart or his eyes. I mean, it's Sudanese and French so fabulously. Yeah.
He did say so at some point. He said, I'm two people, or I have two hearts, or something.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's the quote we've used on the press release. It's also on the paper as you go out. Right. And it's one that he used, I think he wrote it first in I can't remember how long ago it was. I think we used it. We used something like that here in the early 90s, but it was also when his work was being shown at the Venice Biennale. Mm-hmm. They used that quote. And he's very strong about that. You don't, you assimilate, but you assimilate on your own terms. I think that's probably how he feels. I don't think that he would ever be a fundamentalist in terms of any culture.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I think Hassan's art is, can only be understood. I mean, you can appreciate it as it is. But I think one of the strongest things about him as a person, before even becoming an artist, is the combination of his writing and his thinking. So when you read what he's, when you read what he writes in Sudan for All and elsewhere, then you have even a depth about why he's painting like that as well. And I think I met Hassan while he was doing his PhD in France in the 90s. And I lived in France, so I can understand, the total happiness, why he was referring to it, why some people wouldn't see it. And this is why I think it's really important to read his writings, because they explore he cannot live without politics. I mean, everything is politicized. Everything has got 3 different dimensions. If you know a little bit of France and a little bit of French history, you understand why he uses words like les ricochets d'avril ou حاجات زي دي. So les ricochets d'avril, it's over there. Or other things, like a lot of words, he's reusing them, recycling words, deconstructing, recycling. Yes, so it's not only about calligraphy in the plain sense. It is calligraphy, but what it means behind the words. So this is why it's multi-layered as art. It's not at all a direct word. This is nice and this is not. And he's actually, Hassan is not interested in you telling him you like his art. That's not the point. The point is to challenge your intellect, what you know about things. Combining, he's absolutely, from what I read and what I hear from him, is his the construction of capitalism all the time. So he's always bringing the international into the.
He lives in the immediate present.
Absolutely,
I mean, that's
absolutely.
That's different with him from the other Sudanese that you're talking about, the Khartoum school. It's a kind of decorative thing.
Yeah.
To what,
everything means something to him. Like even that one, where you think that he's only talking about, images from Europe. The whole frame is written actually with La Ghaliba illallah, which is a decoration which is found in Granada, in Alhambra.
Okay.
So he's always bringing things that are also,
juxtaposition
between cultures. Between cultures, and which is really interesting. This La Ghaliba illallah is decorating the whole Alhambra palace, and you're just wondering why La Ghaliba illallah?
The why, I mean, the why is something else.
Yeah. So yeah, I would invite everybody to read as well a little bit of his writings, because they are so rich in references and in explaining art in a completely different way.
That's true. Some of it's online. I mean, some of it's in English. You probably have talks with him in Arabic. I mean, he's just
in Sudan for all he's writing as well. But some of his writings are in English. He writes in French. He writes,
Yeah, some in French. I read that. In Arabic ones, he seems to put a lot of effort into those as well. He's very much wants to talk with people. Wants to communicate.
Yes, yeah.
That's clear. Yeah, I mean, these letters would never have come to me unless me.
And his work, Arabic, white paper,
and the colors.
And the colors. I think his movement of the words and the shape make them like landscape. How do you feel about that, Ibrahim?
That's what you feel about it.
Landscapings. Because what he came from?
He had a piece of work that he used Arabic calligraphy to paint a complete landscape.
It's based a little bit on Van Gogh.
Yes, exactly.
Van Gogh drawing.
Yeah. Some of the things that is said to him by Abdullah Bola, I don't know the meaning in French, but I remember I called this let us joie de vivre. Let us, yeah. And that's the whole discussion about 2 or 3 years ago, the happiness of life. I think joie de vivre is happiness of life. You're a French lady. Well, thank you very much. Now I know something. So to challenge himself and just enjoy what he is doing, irrespective of what you say or what you think. I'm doing this, and if you like it, okay. If you don't like it, it's also okay. I think this is the way he thinks. Okay, the stick later.
Right. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. Thank you, Elspeth, for having us this afternoon. Elspeth organizes talks every Saturday in February about the exhibition, so you're all invited to come next Saturday from 2 to 4 to hear, where is she? Yeah, so if you have time next Saturday.
We'll do a little bit. We're going to talk a
Yeah.
little bit about one of that tale that Hassan wrote about his grandmother, the goat that got its head stuck in the jar, and the international development expert as an example of his current politics, actually. And then we'll move to the outreach that deals with, or covers the kind of work that he's doing in Sudan and Sharjah.
Yeah. I'm definitely coming, so everyone have some time come. No, that's fine. And